All right, all right. Welcome back to Public Comment. I want to thank you all for tuning in last week where we talked a whole lot about murals and different things in tax. And when I say we, myself and the good brother Malachi Barrett, this is Khary Frazier of Detroit is Different. Malachi is of Bridge Detroit, and this is Public Comment for January 24th, 2024, where we're going to talk a lot about Detroit municipal politics. That's what we do here. Malachi, my brother, how you doing today?
Beautiful. I'm great. It's
All right.
warmer than last time we were in here.
Understatement. Understatement. All right, so we're gonna get active on a couple different stories. As always, you're staying on the pulse and the beat for what's happening with Detroit City Council. I urge everyone watching this to go to Bridge Detroit. And when you go to Bridge Detroit, you got to subscribe to the notebook. Malachi is going to keep you updated with so much of what's happening in city council because city council meetings are, I don't know, somewhere between 4 to 5 hours every Tuesday for the body of the whole. But it's so many other committee meetings and other happenings and things happening with the mayor of Detroit. And Malachi stays on it. So, how do they get that, Malachi?
Go to bridgedetroit.com, sign up for free, just put in your email address, and we'll send that in your inbox every morning. The council notebook goes out Wednesdays at 5:45 a.m., but you can click on it whenever you get around to it.
All right. All right. So we're up, and this is like a lot of stories kind of connected to that. These are like some really cool stories. I was looking at it. We're going to open up, and we start with a very interesting something from my district person, District 2. Angela Whitfield-Calloway had a proposal, something that she just introduced and spoke on at council about look, developers developing things in the city need to help by giving a tax to help with childcare. As we know, the rising cost of childcare in America is extremely high, like to the point where, when I was younger, it would be by month. Now they go by week and it kind of like plays mental games with you. And you'd be like, $380 a week. Dang. You know what I'm saying? It's like I'm about to stay home and babysit my own kids. So I think this would be something interesting. Let's expand and talk a little bit about it.
Yeah, so she's proposing an ordinance that would require developers of office, retail, and hotels to basically pay a fee that would fund childcare services. That fund would go toward the creation, like the actual construction of childcare facilities, could be used for training development programs for childcare providers. It also could be used for subsidies for lower income families to afford childcare. It's like really insane. I wish I would have pulled some numbers up for this, but like childcare costs in America are going up. Anybody with kids, you don't need me to tell you this. I have some friends of mine. I mean, they're looking at probably paying like $2,000
Yeah,
a
a
month.
month. Yeah.
It's like a rent for your kid, basically. I mean, rent costs are already expensive. You're basically adding on top of that to take care of your child. I've heard kind of different things about the availability also of childcare space in Detroit, and they're, depending on, I think, the neighborhood that you're in, part of the city you're in, there's not as much access, and especially to affordable childcare. But even just like geographically, is there something that you can realistically get to on your way to work or within your area? So it'll be interesting to see where this proposal goes. We're still pretty early on. She's basically asking for an ordinance to be written, and then there will be a whole process of city council debating the merits of that in committee, but that'll all be happening at the public health and safety committees, which meet on Mondays. So next week, we'll probably get more of a look at, some of the specifics of this and what exactly would the fees be charged. This is modeled off of a program in San Francisco that she referenced in the documents here. And that basically charges a fee based on the square footage of a project. Different rates for office and hotel, but ranging around like $20 per square foot, they would have to contribute toward this fund that would be managed by the city.
I like the whole concept, period. And a lot of this must be fleshed out because introducing this and how it works in San Francisco, the Bay Area, things are a lot different. As we know, anything tax related must go to the state house. Just so people know, anything tax related will run through the state house, even if it's a Detroit city tax. Michigan, it's a Michigan-based thing. And then also it comes to like, will this be like voucher-based? Will this be like just an overall like, hey, we're going to give the money to the daycares and they can figure out how they will like to implement it. It's a couple different questions that go and apply here. And then if it is voucher-based, is it, does it cut off like at a certain age? You know what I'm saying? Because it's like, hey, why your kid dying in daycare? And it's like, hey, because I got a job where my kid got to get some help. So it's a lot of questions that will be fleshed out, looked at, but this is promising. What was the response from everyone else in council about it?
Well, it was quickly kind of moved forward. This is basically a memo that asks
Mhm.
for a proposal to be or an ordinance to be written. So there hasn't really been a full conversation at council yet on this, but I would imagine, Callaway seems to be very plugged into these kinds of like meat and potatoes type of issues around affordability and how
Mhm.
difficult it is for families to basically operate here in the city.
Mhm.
So this kind of is in line with a lot of different things that she's working on toward that end. I think the key thing, it says in here that this is crucial to ensuring that our city's growth is inclusive and sustainable. By requiring developers to contribute to childcare infrastructure, we can support working families and promote the overall well-being of our community. And that's kind of what I think this is really based in. The city does have the ability to charge fees, so this isn't a tax that would require any kind of like state law change. So
Oh
far as I
wow.
know.
Okay, I didn't even know that. So that's interesting. And then in that same city, and I'm moving, and Lord knows this is like a fast transition and everything of that fee. And what would happen in reference to that. Let's talk a little bit about all property values have risen in Detroit. It's been presentations through the mayor. I was watching the Motor City Match 25th round awardees, and he was speaking about it and talking about how some of the independent businesses are helping with that, and just property values are rising throughout the city of Detroit. You have this story. We definitely want to introduce this as well.
So basically, every year around this time, right before assessment notices go out to property owners, the mayor will have a press conference celebrating this 8-year trend now of property values increasing. This year is a little bit different in that you can kind of see that map there. Basically, there's
Mhm.
not a neighborhood in the city that has lost value according to the city of Detroit. And what they did is they analyzed sales data over the last, I believe, 2 years to kind of make these estimations about where property values are going. There was a 23% increase on average last year. Some neighborhoods a lot more, some a lot less. But 2/3 or so of neighborhoods saw an increase in value between 15% and 29%. So this is good news for homeowners, but particularly for folks that have held on to their property. Going back to 2017, you would see your property value triple, according to the numbers that the
Mhm.
city is putting out. And overall, the value of homes in Detroit are getting close to $9 billion now, billion with a B, compared to just under $3 billion in 2017. So the mayor is talking about how this is a good investment for folks that have stuck around. I would like to see that on a graph a little bit further. I don't have the kind of full historic context of how deep things sunk, around the
Well,
recession.
I did my little bit of sleuthing, adding and everything here. You know what I'm saying? I went to I want to say it's Investopedia. They provided some information from Zillow of home prices, and let's look at some of these slides as we see that the property values have risen a lot. The lowest, this is like an aggregate. To the right, you'll see a chart that is to the right, you'll see the chart that is like all the cities. Home price index changed since 2000. Detroit is right above Flint. Flint is at the bottom. We love Flint. They up the road. We love Flint Town. Some
So
of those
we're
same challenges that Flint has faced.
are we that black line then?
Definitely. Nah, we're below that black line.
Oh,
We
black line's the
are,
average.
yeah, black line is the average. We're still below average. It's certain things that have impacted Detroit that have us below average. But when you look towards the end, a lot is still spiking, moving up in that trend. And I also have this to kind of compare to other cities. Chicago and Atlanta have been like also like near that teetering near the bottom. Atlanta's tweaked up a little bit. Chicago has tweaked down some. So property values as people in real estate, it seems like 2008 has happened again as far as the amount of realtors, the amount of investment. It's a lot of things bustling around real estate, especially during COVID-19. And this is good for people such as myself that have held on to the property with it. He was even saying in the Motor City Match presentation, which is real, that because of state law, the taxes won't go up beyond like about a 5%. But he was more so speaking to, like, if this was any other investment, this is like gambling or something. You know what I'm saying? Things are hiking at the rate. Detroit has transitioned more to a renter-based city.
About 50-50 now. Yeah.
Yeah, as opposed to like what it once was a home ownership based city. Even like neighborhoods like mine, things have transitioned, but we have to be mindful of where things go, because even right now, just renters' rights and the advocacy for what that is that was spoke to at the what was that, Detroit Policy Conference through the regional chamber, with my interview with Rebecca Irby of New Detroit, and where things lie from there. But overall, this is something that could be instrumental. I believe that housing stocks are going up across the nation, and at certain points, it was not going up as exponentially fast. More needs to be explored in this. I'm sure talking to the great Theo Pride, he would add a whole lot more context to this. What has been like the pulse and the feedback you've been getting connected to this?
Well, I mean, I think you're smart to bring up that, there's the whole other class of people we're not talking about when property values go up, and that's renters, people that actually don't own a home in Detroit. And what is the impact on them? Some of the increase in taxes, which you're right, are capped at 5%. So, if you're on average, everyone's property values raised 23%, your taxes don't go up that much. It only goes up by 5% thanks to the Michigan Constitution. But, does that 5% increase get factored into rent? Does that mean that you're paying a little bit more year to year? Does that rise in property values make it more difficult to afford a home and a down payment, and kind of further kind of put these houses out of reach for renters who haven't been able to buy? Rising property values are good, but that's if you own property, right? It's good for the city budget. They make more in tax revenue when the values are increasing, and property value in Detroit used to be this, as Stephen Henderson says, an amazing economic engine for the city. Not as much anymore. Property values don't generate as much revenue for the city compared to like gambling taxes. So yeah, I mean, I think this is, generally good news, but putting it in context of what's going on with the rest of the country, this also, I think, affects a little bit the kind of long-term perception of Detroit being a place to buy a really cheap house, for better or for worse, right? And does this kind of change people's calculation around moving into the city, where if the values are going up, maybe they look around and they say that I'm not getting as good of services compared to some other places where I might be paying close to the same. So I think what we really need to be doing is more kind of comparisons to other areas, and seeing kind of where Detroit fits in, with neighbors in Michigan as well as the rest of the country.
I would say when I looked at that chart, and I'll send that over to you, a lot of the other cities were like Michigan cities. So like Monroe, Saginaw, like when we look at the bottom, and just certain things that have impacted Michigan since, I guess, the transition from the industrial age to the technological information technology age, and getting that footing. But this still, I think, is a place where people owned in housing stock. What that is kind of brings us to one of these next stories coming up, but we'll talk a little bit more as we transition into the next story, talking about downtown parking structures and the need for downtown parking structures to be repaired. It's a lot that you all see. As you know, if you go downtown, parking is paramount. It may make a lot of decisions about how you move downtown, but with that being said, there was a presentation where some money from the Downtown Development Authority now is being approved to help some of the private lots for the NFL draft, for the influx of traffic that's expected to come.
So the
what can you speak
DDA
to this?
Yeah, the DDA basically approved a we'll call it $830 $100,000 plan to subsidize some repairs of parking lots, service parking lots in downtown. Still working on getting, an exact list of locations, but you can think of places kind of along Greektown, over by Gratiot, and kind of that Randolph area corner, just south of Ford Field. You can think of Park Street, kind of on the west end of what will be the District Detroit, where a lot of the surface parking lots are located in kind of the lower Woodward area. And the DDA collects money, basically collects, they skim off the top of the tax increases. So when the value, we're talking about the value of property increasing in Detroit, the DDA collects that increase in taxable value for properties within the downtown, and then redistributes that within its service area, the boundary of the downtown area. So it kind of keeps this property tax money, the growth of downtown circulating through downtown to kind of keep this momentum going. And they're using some of that funding to upgrade the infrastructure of these parking lots. It means a number of things, from better kind of fencing and what they call bollards, those like big concrete things that keeps cars from driving through, to landscaping improvements, which I imagine will probably be the most noticeable thing. And some signage as well. And there's a tiered structure. So, if you get on board with the city's plan, you can get 100% of the cost subsidized. If you want to do a little bit less, you get, partial subsidies for it. What is interesting to me, though, is this comes after, it comes amid a lot of investments in the downtown to make the space more beautified, as they call it, more welcoming for people who are going to be coming down here for the draft.
It'll be a lot of people.
Yeah, they say like 500,000 people potentially, last number I saw. And that kind of investment in the downtown also always raises questions about, what are we doing to beautify neighborhoods and improve those spaces as well. So this comes, immediately after last week. There was a presentation on the DDA's finances. They're spending a lot of money. 75% of their expenses go toward bond debt that was issued to create LCA, which kind of helped begin, or elevate this whole, downtown kind of growth strategy.
Yes.
So a lot of the taxes that they're collecting are going to pay off that debt. And then also, there's a long running conversation about how effective is the DD and how much does it make sense to be kind of keeping this investment in one space, I guess is what I'm trying to get at here. And the council president has issued a memo reiterating her request to look at whether it makes sense to actually dissolve the DDA to get rid of it.
And that's why I really wanted to explore this story. Just that statement alone, I wanted to get the feedback. As Theo Pride speaks to this all the time, like, oh, you're capturing most of that tax that we don't even get into neighborhoods and throughout the city. What was the response of some of the other council members to that request? And we definitely know it's a lot of bonding and the legality of something like that, especially still like from the shadows of bankruptcy. It's a lot to take into consideration in reference to that, but at the same time, it still is such a odd, or I don't know if odd is the right term, but that the place where most tax revenue is captured only can be spent inside that space, suppresses so much of the only money spent invested into neighborhoods will come from that neighborhood tax base or some type of philanthropic investment.
I think the big thing kind of standing in the way of getting rid of the DDA is that they have hundreds of millions of dollars in debt to pay off because of these bonds. So the budget presentation that we got shows that there's just shy of $300 million in outstanding bonds, plus about $240 million in interest. So that's, ballpark around $337 million. We'll call it $340 million in debt. And based on the documents that we were provided there, the DDA is going to continue collecting taxes from the increases in property values through 2051. So it'll take until 2051 to pay off all of that debt. And legally, I don't really know what could be done to dissolve the DDA before that's kind of settled, right? I mean, that's a lot of money that's kind of outstanding. Now, are there ways to transfer that debt somewhere else? And I don't know. We have to get a lawyer in for that. But I do think it's interesting that the council president, in her leadership position, has raised this. She talked about it a little bit last year when the District Detroit tax rates came through. She was the only person to vote against that.
Yeah.
And at the time, she was kind of talking about exploring this idea. The DDA, was established in the 70s under Coleman Young, and it was, specifically to kind of jumpstart
Downtown at the
downtown,
time.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So here we are, 50 some years later.
Mm-hmm.
Has that downtown growth occurred? I think Sheffield's argument in the memo is, we got there. Why are we still doing this?
I definitely think that's key as we get a little bit into overtime and we at the 20-minute mark. But I want to touch on this one just because just being as a resident, it was some talk about there will be a hike in trash fees. As a resident and homeowner, bulk pickup is something that is it's transition, like even going back to Mayor Kilpatrick days. It's like, once a month they take it away, they bring it back, how it happens, where it works. Bulk pickup in the city of Detroit is something. And when you're a person such as me, meaning that my property footprint, I also am off a service drive and I'm at the corner, so that means that almost like every time I look up, somebody's like dumping something illegally on my grounds. And certain people are getting tickets for illegal dumping now because that's something that the city's pursuing a whole lot more, which I understand, but it's sometimes tough because it's like, what am I supposed to do? Even if I were to catch the person, you know what I'm saying? Am I supposed to go out there with a strap like, hey man, stop throwing tires over here? You know what I mean? It's certain spaces and places. And I personally think that some of this illegal dumping in the city of Detroit ain't from Detroit residents either. I think it's some contracting that goes on outside and they just feel like landfill costs, let's go to the city of Detroit. There are some I have delivered actually to East Davidson, one of the lots that you can pay per pound, I think per ton, to drop off some trash, because I've done that before. And this is what's so crazy. The last time I did that, I took so much trash off the side of my house, took it down there through East Davidson, and then 2 days later, people dumped it again. And Scott Benson was speaking to this, I know I'm stepping on the whole idea of the story and what the rate hike will be, but I'm just talking about sometimes the frustration of trash in home ownership, especially if you had a corner house or where or like a lot where people just feel like, hey, it's a free for all, And also bulk pickup has transitioned from, like, I want to say it's like a cubic yard, where it's like, damn, I feel like I gotta be in physics class, like, what the hell is a cubic yard? You know what I'm saying? And what they will pick up, what they won't pick up. It's definitely transitioned from what was, especially as this as our trash is privatized now, and what they won't pick up. It can be frustrating as a homeowner of what goes, when it goes, how it works, talking to the people, catching the truck, especially days like this where so much snow, slush, and ice or wintry mix outside. It can be frustrating. As frustrating as Scott Benson's story that was like hilarious as ever, where he said he mentioned in council that he is driving through the neighborhood and he sees somebody throw some weave outside the window, and he follows them past 8 Mile, which is very brazen. So I thought that, I was like, boy, this is so classic. And I just know, like, sometimes you just get this frustrated with how people can treat the city. But all of that soliloquy, I had to add that in my layers and contextualization of what you deal sometimes with the illegal dumping, bulk pickup, and trash pickup, and knowing how it works.
I think that's actually like pretty key to what we're talking about here. That people are going to be asked. So basically, the city is looking at some new garbage contracts that would increase service. It would make weekly pickup of bulk trash and recycling, curbside pickup, and alleyways to help kind of get rid of some of that illegal dumping that you're talking about. But that's going to cost people a little bit more. So the question is really, are people satisfied with the current level of trash service? Seems like not really, based on what we're hearing. I mean, especially around things that are dumped on curbside. People want more. I think it's a bi-weekly schedule right now. Not enough. It seems like not frequently enough. And to what extent are you willing to pay for that a little bit? And to what Benson is speaking on is, does this increase in service create almost an expectation that you can dump places because it gets picked up more frequently? And how is the city going to increase enforcement of what's already on the books to prevent that if we're going to be improving service? Because as you're saying, bad actors are going to say, oh, the city of Detroit's picking this up. Cool. Okay. Bet I'll put it down in the corner. Councilwoman Mary Waters had a similar story where she was driving on, I can't remember if it was the Lodge or 94 or one of the freeways. And somebody was wearing a yellow vest like they were a city worker, but they were driving north out of the city and dumped a bunch of trash outside their car, just like on the side of the freeway before they pulled up. And, she's talking about the kind of the frustration and the disrespect really that comes with that, seeing people just using Detroit as a dumping ground. So these contracts are going to be moving forward. The city's council is taking a little bit of time to kind of understand to what extent are people willing to pay for better, more frequent service. The Duggan administration has pitched raising annual garbage fees from $240 a year to $270. So it would go up by $10 every year for 3 years. The rest of the money, so basically it would cost an extra $12 million to do this. The rest of the money would come from the general fund, and it'd be about a 70-30 split. 70% of the money would come from the budget. 30% would come from an increase in people's garbage fees. Benson has also said it's important to kind of look at, we're putting more budget money toward trash pickup. That means that we're potentially not using that money for other things. So, budget season is coming up in the spring. I think the idea would be to get this contract out before then, but that's going to be part of all these conversations. Like, where's that money going to be coming from? What is it potentially taking things away from? Is this a high priority for people? So yeah, those conversations are going to be had. There's no vote scheduled on this yet, but
definitely. And with it, like I say, I mean, at the root of a lot of this stuff, it's such a difficult thing. It definitely involves community and more communication. I definitely can say, even when I dealt with the break-in that I had a couple years back, that a lot of people were like, wow, where things go. I can strongly urge that a key deterrent from a lot of the illegal dumping and things like that is making sure you do your, and I'm not trying to sound so kumbaya, but doing your part and making sure your grass is cut, your home looks occupied, and everything is together. Like even the home down the street that's at the corner, and I know people are using that for, definitely shelter in this time of like it being so cold, but it's been plywooded up. I want to say they've plywooded it up like 4 times, and then they open the plywood, you open the plywood. Now it's like, when you're looking for illegal dumping places, it's like, oh, right there, this place where the plywood is off to the side, where a person is trying to stay there because it's so cold. Like, it's a lot of other dominoes that impact things, especially in communities like mine. And the reality is, it's a lot of places and communities like mine throughout the city of Detroit are like blocks and streets. So some of the best deterrents towards this is keeping it clean, and then also me building a relationship with, like, as you say, like as the renter class, like, renters, when they move out and are evicted, I've seen, especially across where like it's an empty lot, people feel like, oh, we can just go, the whole way, where I'm eyeballing a cubic yard. I know that ain't no cubic yard, and it'll continue to fester. Like, what can be done? It could be a lot. So with that, I know we already overtime. How do people get in contact with you? Drop that information.
Yeah, come on down to bridgedetroit.com, bridgedetroit.com. And there's a link right there. You can just sign up for our free newsletters. You can look at our website too, but it seems like most folks are rocking with the newsletters. You can also hit me at mbarrett@bridgedetroit.com. That's my email request. Inbox is always open. Find us on social, search Bridge Detroit on Instagram and Twitter and all that stuff, TikTok, if you do that kind of thing, which has been bad for my health lately. I'm trying to stay away from the TikTok.
Man, oh man. And I just, speaking of that, I just ran the banner across. We getting in rhythm with this. Next week, we gonna be in rhythm.
Getting slick, man.
I know. We getting tighter with all of this stuff, man. I also want to say, I know we spoke about redistricting that was tabled for next week. We may actually have a special guest to talk about some state redistricting of the state house, because that's kicking up well. And I got a big homie that's big into that. So with that, we'll see you next week. Public comment. Peace.